it seems like a lot to give, a lot to sacrifice, but it's so worth it. And there's even more that we can give to God because we're giving to a Lord who his body was broken for our freedom. Welcome back to the Call for More podcast. We are here and this podcast exists because we want to kill apathy and live radically. Jack, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Really good. How are you?
I'm doing good. We have some exciting news for our followers. We have a newest addition of the family, not another baby. Esther's thriving, but who's about to join the family?
We just put down a deposit for 2 Highland cows, like those fluffy, miniature-looking cows from Scotland. So we're getting a male and a female, and they're pregnant with a baby. So
they're a breeding pair.
Yeah. So we'll have like one baby a year starting this year.
And she's probably going to have a baby in November, December. We're going to keep you guys updated.
Yeah.
And we found them off Craigslist.
Yep. Craigslist is the best place.
The lady has a TikTok and she shares all about the cows on the TikTok. And the it sounds like the bull is really not friendly, but the female is like really friendly, and you can like brush her. It's going to be hilarious. I'm so excited for this.
And we just have we have 2 acres here in Tennessee. And so we're just going to let them like free range around the property, and we'll see how it works with cars. Like we host a lot. We have a lot of people over. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they don't destroy anyone's cars.
And one thing about our personalities is Jack and I are definitely send it type of people.
Yeah.
Like we just buy things or do things and we just figure it out on the way. So I'm really curious to how it's going to be like.
If it's going to work out.
They're just free reign. Like they could literally walk onto our deck and like come into the house if we leave the door open, which would be so funny. Well, if you're joining us, also, by the way, side note, some of you guys have left just some really sweet comments on YouTube recently, and we just love hearing from you. And so I just want to encourage you, like, keep DMing us. I just saw a DM on our Instagram this morning that I want to take some time to reply to, because it was asking more questions about our podcast we did recently about hearing the voice of God. Nice. And she like heard something. She's like, is this God? Is this not? So like, cool. Send us the questions, send us comments. Like this is a community. We want to be there for you. And if you're joining us for the first time, we are currently in the middle of a series about the rule of life, which essentially is about like living your lives so that you can focus on Jesus, deepen your relationship with Jesus. And there's certain practices like Sabbath or prayer or just like figuring out how to talk to God that help us like grow our relationship with him. So today we wanted to talk about something that Jack and I, when we first met, we both realized we shared a passion for, which is, and it's an interesting thing to be passionate about, but we're going to share why it's so worthy of your passion, and that is fasting.
Yeah, we're stoked to talk about fasting today because it's not really talked about that much in the Western church, and I wish it was. And I personally have heard many people that have a lifestyle of fasting and fast frequently say that that they believe it's the most powerful spiritual practice. Wow. And so I think it makes sense that the enemy doesn't want us to fast. And in the West, where we're focused on comfort and sugar, and we have like the worst diets, it makes sense that we don't really fast here or value it. But hopefully today might change that or change your thinking around fasting. Yeah,
and the apprentices of Jesus would fast twice a week, usually on Wednesdays and Fridays from
early Christian church.
Yeah. From sun up to sundown. Yeah. And it was just like
every week.
Wednesday, Friday. And it was just a way of their life. Like fasting was just a part of your normal rhythm. Plus they had the 21 days of Lent that they would fast for. And I'm not sure where you're coming to in this conversation, but maybe because we were talking about this with our discipleship group, and there was there were some that have fasted as a way of like physical, like it's helpful for like doing intermittent fasting is for health. And then there were some that felt like there was like too much legalism in their church growing up about fasting, and they didn't understand why. And so that's really what we want to get to, is like the why behind it. Like, why does God call us to something that it's like kind of from 2020, like from hindsight, it's like you give up food. Like, why would a loving God call us into something that is kind of in some ways suffering? But there is something there. There's something deep and there's something rich there. And we've both seen in our own lives. Jack, what has been your experience with fasting?
Yeah. When I first became a Christian, like I want to say 2 weeks after I became a Christian, they're in Portland where I'm from. I don't know if it's still going on, but there used to be every year, all the churches, like mostly all the churches in the Portland area, came together for 7 days of prayer and fasting. And I had only been a Christian for a few weeks, and I was gonna fast, just water fast for the 7 days. That was what I wanted to do.
7 days just
water. But I was
Oh.
running cross country at the time, and my parents were like, we do not want you to do that. And I was like, okay, if you guys fast with me, I'll do 3 days. So my parents fasted with me.
You roped them in.
Yeah, they did a water fast, but I came in one day and my mom was like, I saw her snacking on some pasta.
No.
Not to out
That's
my
so
parents,
cute.
but they did like fast with me and come. And
That is
but-
so sweet of them.
I know, really sweet. But I would say in the beginning, I didn't understand the purpose of fasting for like quite a long time. I would hear people talk about, man, this is such a powerful spiritual practice. But for me, I would just kind of not eat and be very hungry, and I wouldn't really get spiritual fruit out of it. And I think there is genuinely a big difference between not eating and fasting.
That's good.
And even now that like Riley and I fast, and sometimes I end up like accidentally just having a day of not eating where I'm not, because I think that there's an active part. There's like the passive part where we're taking something out, subtracting food, but there's an active and an addition that needs to happen when we're fasting as well, in order to like get spiritual fruit out of this set apart time. So I had several years of just kind of seasons where I would fast maybe like once a week for about 24 hours. And it took a long time before I began to be like, oh, I'm actually seeing growth in my relationship with the Lord through this. And then I've had some really cool like breakthrough moments where I fasted for something specifically. One of those was when I graduated college. It was in my first business. I moved home. I had been managing social media for different businesses while I was in school, and I would do like content creation and manage all their social media platforms. And I was charging like $100 a month for all my different clients at the time. So I was trying to live. I moved home, was living on my brother's couch for free, and I was making like $400 a month trying to live on that with my social media clients. And I began to pray, and I was doing outreach to different businesses around the Portland area. And I decided to fast. I felt prompted to fast. So I fasted one day for my business and asking God for vision and to align things and give favor. And that day, a potential client called me and was like, they ran a big chain of restaurants in Portland. And they called me and they were like, hey, can you come in and pitch our whole team today, this afternoon? Wow. And I kind of freaked out, and I was like, oh man, I'm fasting. I can't think as clearly because I haven't eaten food. Maybe I should eat so that I can be clear-minded and pitch them well. And I prayed, and I felt like God was like, no, don't eat, go and trust me. And they're going to I had decided that I was going to give them two options of a $1,200 a month or an $1,800 a month contract. So like literally more than 10 times than what I was charging anyone else. And I felt like God said, don't eat, and they're going to take the higher contract if you just rely on me. And so I went in, pitched them, and they ended up taking the higher contract. Wow. And so that was like really what started my business, was out of that fasting and God breaking through in fasting. And so I think it can be powerful for praying for something specific. But what about you? What's your experience with fasting?
Yeah, well, I love what you said before, Jack, about like the difference between like fasting versus just being hungry. Like, and you've reminded me of this before, of like the time that you spend eating, you need to be spent praying. And I love food like so much. So like giving up food is really hard. And I also realize how much I spend thinking about food. I feel like people that are listening to this can relate. Like I'll be like, what's my next meal? And I'm like thinking about it, I get really excited about it. And so like spending that time being like, every time I get hungry, I'm like, Lord, let me think of you. Like let the hunger pains and like that feeling and that discomfort be like little reminders in your body to put back your attention on God. And I grew up with a mom that I saw fast a lot, which was awesome. And one of the most like impactful things my mom ever did for me is I watched her fast for 40 days for my future husband. And I was a teenager, and she did a juice fast, and I just saw her like, it seemed so difficult, but she kept at it, and she was so determined, and she was doing it for somebody else, which I thought was really cool because it was also like innately teaching me that fasting, because I feel like often we think of fasting as something like, oh, we need a breakthrough for something, or like I need to become more dependent on God. Two amazing reasons to fast. But then here's my mom fasting for someone else's breakthrough, for my sisters and I. And then it's so wild. I'm sitting here with you. Like she did 40-day fasting, and you are the result of it.
So
like
cool.
There was so much prayer and so many different things that went into our love story and God orchestrating this. But wow, that was one of them, is the sacrifice of a mother to believe that her daughter was going to marry someone as amazing as you are. And another.
What does that mean? Can you explain to us a juice fast?
Yeah.
Like what is that?
So she had this like, she pretty much just drank 2 liters of this every day of this one type of juice. And it was like carrots. Oranges. It was 5 different fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
The exact same. It was like this red. And honestly, it tasted terrible. And I was like, I did not know how you're doing this for. And I joined my mom for a few days of the fast because I was so inspired by her. But then I was like, I don't even know how you're doing 40 days of this.
Wow. I love that. So it's similar to like a Daniel fast. A Daniel fast is from
you want to explain that?
Daniel 1. Christians will do this. The scripture doesn't specifically like give like a mandate for a Daniel fast. But Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, did this in Daniel 1, where they just had fruits and vegetables when King Nebuchadnezzar had invited the 10 most like excellent Hebrews into his palace. And they just had, Daniel didn't want to defile himself by having the wine and the meat that the king and the food that the king was providing. And so he said, hey, let us just have vegetables and water for 10 days and you'll see that we will be stronger and fitter and more vibrant than anyone else. And
so cool.
The cupbearer did let them do that. And then Daniel and his friends were like way better than everyone else. And so that's where the Daniel fast comes from. So a lot of people will do, I've done one Daniel fast before which was, I like lost a ton of weight. Remember that was the beginning of last year.
That was the beginning of last year. That was so tough.
And it like way lowers my sex drive.
That's what I'm saying. It was tough.
Made it really tough for Riley.
I
lost like, I did it for 21 days and I lost like all my energy. I like lost a lot of weight as well during it. It was hard.
You were just existing.
It was hard, but I felt like the Lord had asked me to. But what you were going to share another story on fasting.
Yeah, anyway. The other story I was going to share is right before we got married, I went away to a cabin and had like I think to me, it was the best day I've ever had with Jesus in my life.
So cool.
And I just rented this like room in this cabin. It was so epic. And I was there and I had fasted through the day, from like the night before until the next day. And then I broke fast with communion and then I had like pizza and I was sitting there like on my own. But the reason I share this story is because I like had like open visions with the Lord. I felt his presence. I was just alone in this cabin in the forest in the mountains in California. And I just experienced him so like I have never experienced him before. Like he was so present in the room. He was just showing showing me like snippets of our future. And it was like, I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't been fasting, because fasting made way to like get rid of some distractions in my life and some time spent eating in my life to make way for his presence. And I like did this even though it was hard, and he like responds to it. God always responds to hunger. And like reminds me of that sermon we listened to a while ago about like what makes a revival happen. And one of them was just like hunger.
Yeah.
And there's so many, I know we're about to get into it, but like examples in the Bible of like fasting making way for God's presence and fasting making way for breakthrough.
So true. Yeah. So good. Yeah. One last fun story is, so Riley rejected me twice when I was pursuing her, when we were dating. Basically I started fasting. I started just like seeking the Lord in prayer and fasting, and I would fast once a week for like a couple months, on Tuesdays, and was just seeking the Lord because I felt like, man, I really feel like she's the one, but she doesn't feel that way. So I'm just going to fast and seek God. And then after a couple of months, it was on a Tuesday that I was fasting that Riley called me and was like, hey, I'm ready to be your girlfriend. Cause I had like asked her multiple times. So.
And the cool backstory behind that is that I felt like the Lord said like Exodus something. So I look and it talked about a Tuesday. And I felt like, even though I knew like almost a week prior that I wanted to officially be your girlfriend, God was saying wait till the next Tuesday, and I was like in anticipation. It was like Christmas. I was like, I can't wait to tell him. And then it was so cool that he wanted it to be told on the day that you were fasting.
Yeah, because she didn't know that I'd been fasting.
No, I didn't.
Every Tuesday.
I don't even think I knew then. I don't think you told me
I didn't.
For a while.
I don't think I told you for a while after that. But so anyways, now we're here, married because of
and Esther's currently taking a little nap. If you're on YouTube, you can probably have the little baby monitor right next to me, and she's just sleeping away.
We have to watch. We have like a little monitor that shows us Esther.
She's knocked out.
But we wanted to dive into what are biblical examples of fasting.
Yeah. You were like, over to you. The first one is Jesus fasting for 40 days in the wilderness. And I love this story because Jesus goes away and 40 days of fasting. That's absolutely insane.
And it says no food and no water for him, which is crazy.
How did he even do that? He was like, not sustained by bread alone, but by something. You quote this all the time.
Where he says, like, I have food that you know not of. And the disciples are like, what? Like, where does he have food? And Jesus is like, so he's there, he's not eating or drinking. And then he's also being tempted by Satan the entire time. And then here he is. It's like an intense time of fasting. And it's crazy that even God, like the Son of God, fasted, which tells us something about like it, because whatever Jesus does in the Bible are things that we need to be doing. Like it's because we as Christians model our life after him. And I love that he fasted for 40 days. And then once he came out of that time, that's when he was unleashed into his ministry. That's when miracles started happening, when he started preaching the gospel, when he was delivering people of demons. And so I think there's something to be said about times in our lives of fasting before God unleashes us into something new. Yeah, so good. And then another example in scripture is what we talked about in Daniel 1, where Daniel and his buddies do what people now refer to as the Daniel fast. And then also in Daniel chapter 10, Daniel is grieving the state of Israel and how they've strayed from the Lord. And so he fasts for 3 weeks, for 21 days. And at the end of 21 days, he has a dream, and an angel comes to him and speaks to him in response to him fasting. And it's really interesting because basically the angel says to him that that like they heard him on the first day of fasting and praying, but there was like battle happening in the heavenly realms. And so because he pressed into fasting and prayer for 21 days, then it broke through. And then the angel is able to come and speak to him and give him the revelation he's like asking for.
Yeah. And then another example I think of is Esther in the Bible, who Mordecai, her uncle, was telling her. So she was queen at the time. And it was like a tradition that the people couldn't approach the throne room if they weren't invited. Like you couldn't randomly just show up and walk towards the king.
Yeah.
And
even though it's her husband.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I know. So interesting. Yeah. And so she finds out that they're trying to kill, there's a day set to kill all Jews. And she's a Jew herself, and so is her uncle. And her uncle is like, you need to like approach the king. But she knows that by doing so, she could risk her life. And she wanted to approach the king to say like, please don't let this law go through. And then Mordecai was like, we need to fast. And one thing I love about the story is she fasted not on her own. She fasted with her community.
Yeah.
And
she called she called all of the Israelites to fast.
She is such a queen.
She was like, everyone fast for 3 days before I go and ask him so that God's favor might be with me as I approach the king.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's also so cool that Esther,
Yeah.
our daughter's name Esther, like I want her to be like that.
Yeah.
Like call together all of people.
Yeah.
And be like, no,
So
this
cool.
is like, we're going to fast. Yeah. So that story, like just like the community, like that's like, this reminds me of another time of fasting is one of my really good friends, Maddie, and I would fast in our singleness on Fridays for our future husbands. And we would fast and we'd be praying for each other's husband and then our own. So cool. And it's like just a good reminder. Like you don't have to do fasting on your own. Like you can, if there's like, I think of my friend Christy, like we fasted together as well. Like if there's something you're really seeking God on and you really need breakthrough in, like ask your friends to fast with you.
Yeah, so good. And then one more example from the Bible is in Acts 13 when they're sending out Paul and Silas and I think Barnabas. It says that the apostles committed to fasting and praying and then the laying on of hands to send out into missions. And so those are just a few of some of the examples in Scripture around fasting. But we wanted to talk about like
you talk about this.
Yeah, why do we fast? What is the purpose of fasting? And we think there are 4 main reasons. One is just humbling ourselves. It's a very humble act to give up food and to be like, Lord, I'm prioritizing you over my own physical well-being, over my own like very physical needs. And then the second is drawing near to him. We fast so that we might hunger for him, so that we might not just be physically hungry, but spiritually hungry, and that we might grow in intimacy and our relationship with the Lord. And then the third is fasting when we're seeking breakthrough on something, wanting to hear from the Lord, to get clarity or break out of a sin cycle or get deliverance and freedom. And then the last one is just to feast spiritually. We deny our flesh so that we feast on the Lord in fasting. Yeah.
And I just want to like encourage you, like our experience has been that fasting has been so worth it. And it is a way that you genuinely, like, it's just one of those things that you get to connect. That is a way that connects with God. And even I want to encourage you, like, there might be days when God's asking you to fast, and even if you don't feel him radically, like do it even out of obedience. Like we've both seen in each other's lives where we do it and we're like, I'm not really sure why I was doing that and that was hard, but I'm just want to be obedient to God. But this is a way, like I have had days like that where it's like, I feel like I didn't connect with God, and other days where I feel like the breakthrough of fasting happened the days after fasting, not the day on fasting. And then I've had other days, like I shared with right before we got married, where I was radically encountered by the love of God. And so like fasting is like an obedience, is a way to be obedient to God, but it is so, so worth it. And it is like a beautiful gift. It's like an offering to the Lord. It's like a way of worship that we get to just be like, God, and also a way of being like flesh die, like body submit to Jesus, because Jesus like, come, you're so worthy of, and like in the grand scheme of things, like I've keep thinking about this, like, does this matter to eternity? Like this has been something I've been thinking about. Like I've been getting worried about certain things, and I keep asking myself, like, will this matter to eternity? And like fasting matters to eternity. And ultimately it's like, it's not even like, it might be a day, a sacrifice, or a few days or a week or whatever God's calling you to. But in the grand scheme of things, you are so much stronger than that. And it's so like, it seems like a lot to give, a lot to sacrifice, but it's so worth it. And there's even more that we can give to God because we're giving to a Lord who his body was broken for our freedom.
Yeah, so good. And before this, we just looked up some quotes of people that we look up to on fasting, because I think fasting can be, for me, for a long time, it felt like such an ethereal thing that I just couldn't understand when people would talk about it. And so I find it helpful just to hear, how do some like heroes in the faith view fasting and what have they said about it? And so we just have a few quotes that I wanted to read. The first one's from Heidi Baker. She's a missionary in Mozambique. And she says, fasting is really all about feasting upon God. It is a way to accelerate our walk with Him. It is an invitation to greater levels of intimacy. And then Dallas Willard says, fasting confirms our utter dependence upon God by finding in Him a source of sustenance beyond food. Jensen Franklin said, fasting is not so much about food as it is about focus. It's not about saying no to the body, but saying yes to the spirit. And then John Piper says, fasting is a way of saying with our stomach and our whole body how much we need and want and trust Jesus. And I love that one because it's kind of like, fasting is like getting in the posture during prayer of being on our knees, where our whole body, we're like, saying with our whole body, God, I honor you, I revere you. But when we fast, it's for a duration of time where we're inviting our body into like a posture of prayer with us. So it's like Romans 12, where it says, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to the Lord, for this is your true and proper worship. And so I just love that in fasting, we get to completely give ourselves to the Lord.
Yeah, and as we end, I just want to end with some practicals of how to fast. And the one is start small. Like, sometimes fasting, if you haven't, if it's not like something you do regularly or have done before, it can seem like a lot. So why don't you just try like skip one meal or like, and also I want to note, like, we're talking a lot about fasting of food, but there's also alternatives of fasting, like fasting of social media. Like since Esther was born, I had like almost 6 weeks off, or I think more than 6 weeks off social media.
Yeah, almost 2 months. Yeah. And then inspired me. I like kind of got convicted because I was getting really distracted on social media. So I took a week off. I deleted like all social media off my phone. And then I still haven't gotten back on. Actually, it's been like 2 weeks now because it's been so nice. Just having like.
That was me. I was going to do 6 weeks, but then I ended up doing more because I was like, actually, this is really nice.
Yeah, you were going to do a month and then it was like 7 weeks or something. Yeah.
So yeah, start small. And what else would you say?
Yeah. And you can fast many different things. Like it can be TV, it can be caffeine, but the idea is to give up something and to use the lack of that thing to help you devote yourself to the Lord. And so like when you're fasting, when you feel that hunger, then that is just a cue to you of like, adore Jesus in your heart, like lift your thoughts to Him, talk to Him. So start small and then think subtraction, not addition. So if you're already super busy, like you don't necessarily need to add fasting into your life. When you fast, you don't want to just have a day of not eating. You want to commit to prayer. And so cut things out of your day on that day and have it be like a less heavy day so that you can really seek the Lord.
And next is you get in what you put in. And so like, honestly, like as Jack said earlier, like you can have days where you just fast, but you're not really getting much out of it. So like when you fast, be intentional about it. Be like, okay, when am I going to pray? When am I going to like stop to seek the Lord? And like be really intentional about fasting. Even if it's just one meal, be like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to get down on my knees. Or I'm going to write a prayer out to God, but like put effort into this and know that God's presence is going to come.
Yeah. And the last thought is that there's no formation without repetition. And so if you've never fasted before, it's going to feel unusual for the first, number of times. For me, it was like a few years. Hopefully for you, it's not that long. But like keep at it. And there is value to like pressing into the discipline. Self-control or self-discipline is one of the fruits of the Spirit. And so just deciding to try out a spiritual practice for a period of time, like, hey, for 2 months, I'm going to fast once a week. And maybe that's just one meal that you're going to fast, but committing to a time with the Lord. And so, yeah, our hope and prayer is that maybe after listening to this, you'll ask the Lord and decide on one step, like, hey, I'm going to give up social media for a day, or turn off my phone for a day, or I'm going to fast next Wednesday. And so we just want to encourage you to pray and ask God, what does he want you to do in response to listening to this?
Yeah, and if you fast, let us know and send us a message about it.
Yeah.
But we love you guys, and we can't wait for you to join us on the next podcast when we talk about another spiritual practice that I hope changes your life.
Thanks for being with us.